Hello, I am Julia Castelli, the host of Show Me Your Diamond podcast, YouTube channel and blog. I am an award-winning entrepreneur in the luxury and jewelry industry, and I am also a coach and rapid transformational therapist. I help women find diamonds, but I also help women find their inner diamond, make it, polish it, make it sparkle even brighter for the outside world. And obviously I invite other diamonds to my podcast and my channels. Today we have the renowned author Isabel Losada. Welcome. Let me tell you a few words about her. She's renowned for her captivating storytelling and for her witty writing with humor, but also with deep meaning and thought-provoking thoughts. So, Isabel, I'm so happy to have you today because I know you have so much to share and you're such an inspirational woman. How did you start your journey becoming a writer and how did you go about it?
Oh, goodness. That was a long time ago now, Julia. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I suppose, like many people, I've had a couple of careers. Writing was actually my third career. I trained originally as an actress. So I was an actress for about 10 years. And I worked in television production for about 6 years. And then I stumbled upon being an author almost accidentally. I had a friend who was becoming a nun. And I noticed when I told people at a party, they were both fascinated and horrified. And so I thought it was a gift for her. I would go and interview 10 other young women becoming nuns and ask them why they were doing what they were doing and talk about God and is there life after death and all that. All the things I think you would want to ask a young nun if you got stuck in a lift with her for 4 hours. So I had a lovely 6 months traveling around convent gardens talking to young women about their vocations. And that first book did very well. And so as a result of that, if you create a book and it does well, then the publishers immediately ask you, what are you doing next? So then I became an author almost by accident. And although that first book was a series of interviews, with all the subsequent books, I've done the writing myself.
Amazing. Yes, I know you have a very unique voice and your writing is so engaging and you're fearless in also what you write. So often your books touch on a very personal experiences and self-discovery, which makes also your books very relatable. How do you decide which aspects of your life to share with readers? And how do you strike the balance between vulnerability and privacy?
Well, okay. So first of all, to explain to your viewers and your listeners, yes, I'm a writer of narrative nonfiction, which means that I don't make anything up. Nothing is invented. What I do is I explore things in real life and then I write about them. And I tend to explore serious topics, but in a humorous way. So in my first book, for example, I went out and I did all those weird and wonderful courses that exist in London that claim that if you do this course, you will become a more enlightened human being. And I did that not in order to make fun of the courses, but in order to make fun of my own expectations and my own prejudices about the courses, really. And so that's the way I write. And I write in a way that's very, as Julia says, it's very informal. And I write just as if I were writing an email to a friend. As to the question of vulnerability and privacy, 6 books later, I really have no privacy. My life is an open book because there isn't a single aspect of it that's not been explored in some sense or another. And when I'm writing, if I'm tempted to withhold, if I'm tempted to withhold information because it feels too sensitive, then I know that I'm onto a really valuable area there. And I attempt not to withhold the most difficult or vulnerable or painful areas from the reader. If it's really difficult to write, then I know I need to keep writing at that point, because that's the point where you can most meet people's vulnerabilities, really.
Amazing. And, you know, I'm asking this question first because it's important to me, but I'm sure there's so many women, but also men out there who want to write a book. And I know I have started even, and it's midway, and then I get scared, like, how much do I share? Would people judge? And yeah, so it's very important. It was very important for me to ask this question. So thank you for sharing. I feel you're right, because if we're worried about something, it means it needs to be shared. I recently have done that with a post. It was something very personal for me, and I thought someone needs to read that. And another thing I wanted to also add about that first book you were discussing,
which is called The Battersea Park Road to Enlightenment, incidentally.
And here it is, guys. You need to read this book, but also all Isabel's book, because they're fun and they're deep and a lot. So this book has traveled with me to Monaco, Bulgaria, and New York. So you guess if I'm a slow reader or I travel too much. It's one or the other. So, Isabel, many of your books explore thought-provoking and sometimes controversial subjects. How do you approach research and ensure that you present a fair and balanced perspective for all?
Well, how do I approach? I mean, I approach, so my first book, the one that we're talking about, is really about happiness and personal happiness. How did I explore that in a balanced way? Well, I don't go into any course, for example, in that book in order to attack any of the people who are presenting them. I'm normally just making fun of myself in the books. And so I don't, and I always run by, because I'm dealing with real people, always, if there's a section that I've written about a person, I always let the person see it in advance and say, is there anything that I've misunderstood? Is there anything that you'd like to correct or change? And sometimes there is, in which case I make the changes. I'm not obliged to do that as a writer, but I don't want to upset anybody, because it's quite powerful to put details about someone in real life in a book. So I always check that they're happy with that. So I think that's. But if I've got anything, I mean, you talk about balance. If I've got anything unpleasant to say about anyone, then I just don't say it. I mean, for example, in that book that we're talking about, there were some courses that I went on where I found the work unconvincing. I attended one workshop that was to do with angels and summoning of angels. And I thought, for example, well, where did she think the angels were before she summoned them? So I found it very unconvincing. So basically, I just didn't include that chapter in the book. I don't want to attack anyone. I just want to look for what is valuable for myself and for the reader.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. So you have traveled extensively and delved into various cultures and belief systems. How has this influenced your writing, and what have some of the most profound lessons that you've learned along the way?
Oh, goodness. Yes, belief systems. Well, that's true. I mean, I started off in Christianity, and I think I was very fortunate. I mean, I'm an atheist now, but when I was a Christian, I think I met some people who were really wonderful examples of the best of Christianity. I mean, really profound followers of Christ in the best way. And I was very influenced by Christianity, by Christ's teachings. And then when I did the Battersea Park Road to Enlightenment, I was then exploring the area of what we would now call the New Age movement, I think. And that has obviously some parallels with Christianity and some crossovers. And then for Tibet with Love, I was then drawn into Tibetan Buddhism, which I learned a lot about that, which is another wonderful, profound belief system. And then in subsequent books, I've explored Advaita and the more Eastern traditions. So yes, I have had a good innings, and with a lot of them. What was your next question? What are some of the profound teachings?
Most profound lessons you learned. And did I understand correctly that after exploring all those beliefs and religions, you became atheist?
Yes.
Amazing.
I mean, I have enormous respect for all these traditions, and I hope I've gained from all of them, but I no longer have a belief in a monotheistic God as is believed in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, obviously. I think the most profound things that I've learned is really, I would now recognize perhaps as a Buddhist principle, but I didn't learn it in that form, is the question of using everything that happens to you in some way for your, as they say in American seminars, learning, upliftment, and growth. So everything that comes at us, and no one says this is easy, but everything that comes for us to stop and think, okay, how can I use this for my growth, and how can I use this for good, and how can I transform this experience? There's a lovely little example of this morning. There's a man on Instagram who's called Cloud Gardener, and he lives, I think it's the 18th floor of a tower block, and he rents it. And when he bought the tower block, he had a clear view over London, but since he gardens on his balcony. And when he bought the tower block, when he had the flat, first of all, because he's rented, there was a clear view, but now they've built a block of flats, and they've put half his balcony that he does all his gardening on into shade. And he's talking to us about how he's learning to love the shade-loving plants, and how he's growing these plants that only grow in the shade. So there's a beautiful and really simple example of, okay, my balcony that was sunny is now half shady. So what can I grow in the shade? And it's a very simple example, but it came to me just this morning. He's called Cloud Gardener, incidentally, for anyone listening. It's a wonderful, wonderful man who, way up on our tower block, and he's growing all these wonderful plants on his balcony.
Oh, what a beautiful example, really. And that others, that whatever happens to us, we should use for enlightening and
learning, upliftment, and growth. I mean, I know upliftment isn't a word, but it's a good way of describing what we mean by the experience.
I like it. I even, after reading your book, because you generally generously share what you learn in all the seminars, because, going on that road, because I'm somewhere as well, on that road, attending so many seminars and learning so much. This costs a lot of time and a lot of also financial investments, and you very generously share that. So that sentence, I even wrote it down to myself, and I keep reminding myself that whatever happens, it's for us to learn and grow.
I try to share what you would call the diamonds.
Oh yes, wonderful. Thank you for making the analogy.
Because, if you go to any seminar, any speech, any lesson, any teachings, any evening workshop, any lecture, there are always one or two things that are really valuable. And, if you really listen for those, then you're never going to come out saying, well, that was a boring evening, because there's always something that is valuable for us. So I try to listen really carefully when I go to an event for those, and then to pass those on to the readers. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So next, your book Sensation bravely explores the topic of sex. What motivated you to delve into the subject, and what kind of impact were you hoping that the book will have on readers?
Yes. Can I just say we just skipped 3 books there. So we skipped about 10 years, but I'm happy to do that. But I'm just saying it didn't go straight from that one to Sensation.
Okay, if you prefer,
no, it doesn't matter. No. You asked me about Sensation. I'm just saying that there are 3 books in the middle. So the books explore changing oneself, and then changing the world, and then changing oneself, and then changing the world, and then Sensation is one of the ones in the changing oneself category. And the idea of that book is simply that, inside every house is a bedroom, and inside every bedroom is a bed. And if what happens there is enjoyable for both parties, then that spreads out to the house and the street, and everyone is happy. And if what happens there isn't enjoyable for both parties, then that has a big impact on our relationships, our children, our families, everything. And so I wanted to look in Sensation. I explore specifically sex in the context of long-term heterosexual monogamous relationships, because that's the category I'm in. I'm heterosexual, and so I was looking at that, and I used very much the same format that I used in Basipat Road to Enlightenment. I went off and explored different workshops, women's workshops, couples workshops. I went to America at one point and joined some workshops there, and the idea was, again, just to explore sensation in the body and how we can enrich those aspects of our lives.
Beautiful. So it's not really so much about sex. It's so much deeper than that.
Well, it is about sex, but it's about sensation in the body. People have a very society has taught us to have a very narrow view of sexuality, that it always has to be red hot. Sex has to be red hot or nothing, and so I explore in the book, what's wrong with a little yellow sex, with maybe a little orange and a little blue, and and to explore sexuality and sensuality in a broader sense, because often people have a very narrow view of what their sex lives ought to be, and when they cease to be like that, then they think they're over.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, interesting. So advocacy is a very important aspect of your work, Isabel, particularly in relations to gender equality, environmental issues, education. And this is how we met, actually. We met at the International Women's Event. And this is where I heard your talk on the latest book that you have written, the amazing book that every woman, every person should read if you care about the environment, the planet. So please tell us more. When I heard about the book, I thought, oh my God, everyone should read it. And you were sharing so passionately so many valuable tips. Of course, we don't have the time to share all of that here, but just with few sentences, tell us why people should read the book and how important that is to you and all the work that you're doing in raising awareness in that area.
Well, I'm not too keen on the word should, because it sounds like a duty, but but I would invite people to read The Joyful Environmentalist, because like all my books, I hope that it's funny. And the idea was, I'd been reading books about the environment for several years, and authors are very conscientious creatures, and so most of them spend at least the first 3 chapters telling you just how bad the international situation is, and by the time you've got to the end of chapter 3, you're ready to kill yourself. So I don't do that. I just go straight into solutions, and in the Joyful Environmentalist, I'm focused on solutions that we can each make, that things that are in our own power to control, in terms of how we live, how we eat, how we travel, how we garden, how we volunteer, how we work, how we shop. Every aspect of our life I explore as to how we can do those things best in order to be the best environmentalists that we can be. And so yes, it's a focus on all the positives.
So yes, please look up the book, The Environmentalist by Isabel Losada. It has so many tips.
The Joyful Environmentalist.
The Joyful Environmentalist by Isabel Losada. And it has so many practical tips on how to do that and feel much better and save the planet.
We'll do our bit towards it anyway.
Yes, exactly, our part, because every part counts.
I believe that each small actions do make a difference, because they build up. So yes, I do believe that.
I believe that too, and I'm so happy that there are people like you who do more than just the single part, because you raise awareness, you done extensive research, you put so much effort to put it in a condensed, but as you said, also fun way for people to read, enjoy, and also do something good.
Yes. Can I just give one example?
Please.
Just
yes.
One example.
Yes.
There's an amazing magazine called the Ethical Consumer Magazine, that tells you before you buy or do anything, which is the most ethical and most environmentally friendly action and which is the least one. For example, banking. If you bank with Barclays Bank, you're banking with the least ethical bank in the country, and they're known for funding the arms industry, for funding the fossil fuel industry. If you bank with a bank called Triodos Bank, and they're not paying me to say this, they're the bank at the top of the ethical consumer list. And so if you're banking ethically, you know that your money is not supporting the fossil fuel industry, is not supporting anything, the arms industry, or anything that is against your values. So that's just one simple example of a simple change that we can make, put your money where your values are. Thank you for letting me use that example.
Thank you for that tip, advice, and information. Very valuable. Isabel, what advice would you give aspiring writers when they're dealing with complex and sensitive subjects?
Well, are you talking about fiction or non-fiction? I think it's very different.
Okay, let's do about fiction.
Okay. Well, we covered it a little bit earlier. I think if someone's writing fiction, if you're writing fiction, you're presumably everyone is basing it to some extent on their own experiences. So it will still involve experiences that relate to people in real life, I'm guessing, even if you change the names and the locations. So I think you have to have some sensitivity to the impact of what you're writing could have on other people's lives. For example, memoirs that blame our parents for everything that are out there. If people are writing like that in order to get what they perceive as an injustice off their chest, I believe those things are best dealt with in the therapy room rather than in writing. But if you're just looking at your own issues and your own sensitivity is entirely falling on yourself, then I think it's different. It's what I said earlier on, is be courageous, be brave, write with the most vulnerability you can, because the nearer you get to what's most vulnerable, the more you reach the lives and you touch the readers. And so I would encourage care and sensitivity where other people are concerned, and enormous courage and vulnerability where the self is concerned.
And would it be different if they were writing nonfiction?
With nonfiction, I would say, especially if you're using people's real names, ask permission. You have to run the writing by people if you don't want to be a bad person. You have to, if you're writing a story as I do, I mean, like, say, for example, I've gone on a workshop and it's your workshop and I'm writing about it. Most people know before I go into the workshop that I'm writing about it, but not always, because sometimes I feel that would impact too much on what's happening in the workshop if they know I'm a writer. So then afterwards, I will let someone know. I'll say, I was writing about that. Here's what I've written. Please check it and check that there's nothing that is misrepresentative or a misunderstanding. So I think, to be a good person. And sometimes people are a little bit shocked. I mean, like, in my last interview, in my last book, The Joyful Environmentalist, I did an interview with Guy Watson, who's the head of Riverford, who is that wonderful company that deliver organic food all over the country. And they're very ethical and they're a wonderful company. And I liked him very much, but he was very grumpy at the beginning of the interview because he was in a bad mood. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in a bad mood this morning, blah, 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 blah." I wrote it all in. I wrote in everything, that he was in a bad mood, that he was late, that he was grumpy, blah, blah, blah. But then I showed him all of it, the whole thing. And he said, "Oh, well, I didn't expect you to put that all in." But he didn't say, "Please take it out." And so what happens then is it's a very real interview, because he's allowed me to leave in all the negative things that I wrote about him in order then the positive things that I say about him, of course, then become more credible. So it was very generous of him to allow me to leave in. He allowed me to leave in the negative impressions he gave as well as the positive ones.
No, that's a beautiful example. And I think it will be helpful for the budding writers to know that that's okay. And
yes, I mean,
go ahead and be more real.
it takes a person to of some stance to be able to be happy about you putting negative things about them in a book and publishing it. But it wasn't, I mean, on the whole it was all right, but I'm just saying, when I do an interview, I always send it to the person in advance and invite them to check it.
Wonderful. That's very respectful to people. And now my favorite question, Isabel, show me your diamond.
Okay. There's this very, very tiny one here. I don't know if you can need a magnifying glass to see it.
Oh,
it's
beautiful.
Tiny. I actually bought this for my daughter once, and then I send it up, but it's so tiny. It's tiny.
It's beautiful. I see it very well on screen. And is there a few diamonds that make a flower?
Well, on this one? Yeah. Oh, I don't know. It's so tiny, I can't tell you. I actually bought it for my daughter, and I've ended up wearing it, and she's complaining that I'm wearing it. But anyway,
so how special is that for you? Because obviously here, what I'm looking for, what do you think is your diamond, the thing that makes you shine, your internal? And then obviously I would ask you about the real jewelry. Well, do you like?
Externally, to be honest, I set no importance by jewelry at all. No importance by. I had a wonderful conversation with a friend yesterday who has a very expensive wristwatch, and he's spending £1,000 on insuring this wristwatch a year. And I'm afraid I laughed out loud, because I was in his car when the insurance company phoned, and they said that it's only valuable if it's on his wrist or in a safe. And I said, but when is it not going to be on your wrist? He said, well, people get mugged all the time. I'm like, only if they're wearing expensive wristwatches. So I don't have anything that's valuable in my house. So I have no fear of burglary. The only thing here that's valuable is the piano, and it would be very hard to carry out. So I don't have things like that. If you're speaking metaphorically, can you ask the question again? What
do you think is your inner diamond? What makes you sparkle? And it's also
makes me sparkle.
Yeah, it also could be your why. It could be also your why. Because
why? I understand.
Have this inside.
Okay, what makes me sparkle? I think, okay, then here's a strange one for you. Here's a strange answer. I was raised by just my mother and my grandmother. And by the time they were 19, by the time I was 19, they were both dead. And I think the blessing of early bereavement is that all your life, you know how short life is. People that have not lost people, many seem to feel as if life goes on forever. But the blessing of bereavement, especially early bereavement, is that you know how short life is. So you value everything and everyone. Because you know, when you say goodbye to someone, it might be the last time you see them. Be kind to everyone always, because you don't know, as they say, what someone is going through. So I am a great enthusiast of life and of all life, which also makes me a passionate vegan. I find it intolerable that we tolerate the cruelty to animals in our intensive farming industry. I just find it unspeakable that we torture pigs and cows and sheep. And so my love for life extends to all creatures. So what makes me sparkle? I think that's it. Knowing that our time here is limited.
Oh, I love that. It's profound. And that's why I came up, because I was also looking for a name for my podcast, because there's so many around. And I was looking for that secret sauce, and I did not want to waste 22 years experience in the diamond industry. And really, while selling very expensive, very beautiful pieces of jewelry, sometimes I could still see that the eyes are not sparkling. And this is when I decided, and I started thinking about the inner diamond, the inner polish the inner work. And that's when I decided to also do additional qualifications and train. And I think you have learned a lot of skills as well. So yeah, so I love, and now asking that question, I think it's also very thought provoking. And I loved what you said, and I'm sure people listening would value that very much. And this leads me to my next question to you. What is success, and do you feel you have achieved it? Do you feel you have it?
Oh, goodness. Leonard Cohen wrote a song in his old age, and he said, "We have our little moment and then it's gone." You know, and so if you look upon success in the arts particularly, I mean, if we look at the most successful, say, musicians of our age, I mean, you look at like Madonna or Michael Jackson, for example, or you know, I mean, look at what happened to Michael Jackson. And so, I mean, success externally measured makes no sense at all, because it can be gone. It comes and goes no matter how bright you shine. You only shine for a while. So do I feel successful? I mean, I always say that if I die tomorrow, some people have read my books and written to me and said that they make them laugh out loud. And I always think, if I get to the gates of heaven and St. Peter says, "So, you know, what's your ticket?" I'll say, "Well, I made people laugh that I'd never met out loud. I created laughter." And I think that's a great joy, to know that I've created laughter. And in Sensation, the book that you were talking about, I mean, I've had some extraordinary letters from people who got their sex lives back as a result of reading that book. And I mean, when they've been married for many years and their bedroom has been cold, to have been able to do that for people I've never met is an extraordinary gift. I have a daughter who on some days likes me. That's another success, you know.
I'm sure she's so proud of you. Maybe she doesn't tell you all the time. That's what, you know, children do.
Well, you know, yes, I think she'd agree with you. So, but I mean, success is a complicated. Do I feel successful? I mean, it's a difficult question, relatively. I mean, you know, my books have done well, but they haven't sold 12 million. I mean, especially with The Joyful Environmentalist. I mean, that is a book that really had a potential to make an impact in the world, and to look and to show people how we can be environmentalists and also enhance our life at the same time. And it came out in March 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, you ask about my advice to writers: if you want to bring out a book, don't bring it out at the beginning of a major international pandemic. That really doesn't help. And so it's helped the people that it's reached, but does it feel successful? No, I'd like to have sold 12 million and, you know, and really had an impact on the environmental situation with that book. And for various factors, it's remained quite small, the readership. So, you know, but that's measuring success in terms of our careers. And obviously we can't do that, because I have a friend who she was a beautiful dancer at the Ballet Rambert for 10 years or something. And she always felt that her career was a failure because she never danced the principal roles. It's like, you danced with one of the best companies in the world for 10 years. And I mean, so no matter how well people do in their careers, there's always you know, what is it they say? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, I agree. And that's why I chose that question, because it's really, as you said, it's not easy, but I want to find out. I'm on this big quest to find out what really people consider success. And it leads to my next very, very difficult question. What is happiness? And do you think you have it?
Well, that's what we've gone right round in a circle in the interview then, because what is happiness is what I explore in the first book. And so it's 20 years since I've done interviews on that book. But, what I say in there is I absolutely was not aiming at the American positive thinking, superficial, everything's marvelous. No, because that obviously is a form of happiness that comes and goes and can be taken away in an instant. What I was exploring more was the kind of happiness that is not dependent on external events, which is the hardest, of course, because I always used to say, if your partner leaves you, your house burns down, you lose your job, you lose everything, where are you then? What is your sense of happiness then, and what you stand on, and what is really your support? And so internally, and so what is happiness? Happiness, another thing I'd say about happiness is it's a subject very worth exploring. I mean, I ran workshops myself. I used to run weekend workshops, and happiness was the subject. And we used to explore this, and I say, what makes us happy? Exploring that subject, I don't see as a selfish pursuit, because the happier we are, the more we have to give to those around us. And
I agree.
And it's increasingly difficult, obviously, in today's society to explore happiness because there's so much pain and suffering and division going on around us. And yet, if we want to contribute value to the world, we have to come from a cup that's as full, or as full as we can make it, whilst at the same time not disappearing into the sort of narcissism and self-love in a negative sense that is so endemic also in some parts of our society. So it's a really, really valuable question. And maybe it's more important to say how valuable the question is than to attempt a superficial answer. But it's not about the denial of the negatives. It's about learning, she says, giving an answer. It's about embracing everything and not having our values in externals, I think, because they're too easily lost.
I so agree with you, and I have been, even exploring the material world, and it's beautiful, and I have had some amazing deals happening and receiving amazing just single payments that could be a few years worth of salaries for some people. And you know what? No matter how much that was, there was always an expiration to that excitement, and it then got shorter and shorter and shorter. Like, so that's why I'm on that journey, exploring so many things that you write about, you're passionate about. That's why I relate so much to you. And that's why also I chose those questions for you, because they're deep, and I agree with you. People should think, because some people go through life without even asking themselves, what is that makes me happy? What is happiness? What is success? Success, as you said, it's so relative to the external world. That woman dancing in that best company, she's successful. To herself, she feels a failure because she's not in the leading role. So it's so important we talk about that. And I'm grateful for your kind participation and sharing your knowledge and experiences and time with us today. Is there something that you would like to leave that beautiful interview with, a takeaway, or any other wisdom, or any last words that you would like to share?
I would like to say, yes, that I do believe the most important work that we can all be doing now is taking care of our planet. And I would like to ask anyone watching, please do buy a copy of The Joyful Environmentalist. It won't make much difference to me,
but it will to the planet.
But it's offering a way for us each to engage with the climate crisis that we have and that we're going into, and it's a joyful way to engage with it. And I believe that looking after our planet and taking care of our biodiversity and all the issues that environmentalists talk about is the most important thing that we can be doing at this time.
Amazing. How do people find the book? Do we go on Amazon and say
The Joyful Environmentalist? It is available on Amazon, and if you have a local independent bookshop that you value,
it's even better.
It's even better. Yes.
Yes, I'll spread the message, Isabel, because I know you personally. I love your writing. I love how passionate you are about those causes, and I will do my part in spreading the word and making and sharing the fact that there's this book, and
Thank you, Julia, and may your diamond shine ever brighter, ever more brightly.
Thank you so much. I'm on a mission to help every woman find her diamond and make it sparkle with happiness.
Good.
Thank you so much, Isabel.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.